They call me cursed, a silent wolf, an empty shell in a world of teeth and fury. For 19 years I believed them. My name is Elara, and today my Alpha has ordered my death. The rain doesn't fall here in the Silvermane territory. It weeps. Cold, gray tears soak my thin shift, mat my dark hair to my neck, and turn the sacred clearing into a pit of mud. My knees sink into it. The weight of the silver chains on my wrists is the only warmth I feel, burning with a cold, poisonous fire. I don't look at the pack surrounding me. Their faces, once familiar, are now masks of scorn. I keep my eyes fixed ahead, on the wooden platform, on the executioner's block, and on him, Alpha Kael. He stands like a statue carved from winter itself, tall and unyielding, his storm-gray eyes seeing straight through me as they always have. His jaw is set, his expression devoid of mercy. This is the man the moon goddess, in her cruel wisdom, tied my soul to, my mate. He has never acknowledged it, and now he never will. The ceremony of rejection was a private agony, a searing pain inside my chest as he severed the fragile, silent thread between us. He didn't even say the words to my face. A beta delivered the decree. Alpha Kael rejects the bond. That was all. Now he watches as I am led to die for a crime I did not commit, the poisoning of his favored beta, Marin. The evidence was a small, ornate vial of nightshade found beneath my pallet. I had never seen it before, but who would believe the wordless Omega over the whispers of the pack? The warriors haul me to my feet, my bare feet slipping in the mud. They guide me up the slick steps. My heart is a frantic, trapped bird. I look at Kael one last time, a final, desperate plea forming in my throat. But his gaze is already turning away, looking over his pack, his people. I am already gone to him. The executioner, a hulking man named Goran, steps forward. He smells of iron and damp earth. He places a heavy hand on my shoulder, pushing me down toward the block. The rough, blood-stained wood grazes my cheek. I close my eyes. This is it. This is the end of a life spent in shadows. I hear the collective intake of breath from the pack. I hear the scrape of metal as Goran lifts the heavy silver axe. Time stretches and thins. In that suspended silence, a thought, clear and calm, rises from the depths of my fear. It is not a prayer for mercy. It is a spark of defiance. I have been silent all my life, but I am not empty. A warmth, foreign and fierce, kindles in the very core of my being. It begins as a single ember in the frozen wasteland of my soul. Then, as the wind whistles with the axe's descent, the ember explodes.
The world did not go dark. It ignited. The axe never touched my skin. A sound like a mountain cracking filled the clearing, a sharp, crystalline shatter that tore through the drumming rain. Silver shards, glowing with a faint, dying light, erupted outward. Goran screamed, stumbling back, clutching his hands. The chains on my wrists did not break. They melted. Molten silver dripped from my skin like tears, hissing as it hit the mud. But I felt no burn, only a rushing, roaring tide of heat flooding my veins. I surged upward, not by my own will, but lifted by a power that had slept for a lifetime. A golden light pulsed beneath my skin, illuminating the pathways of my body like rivers of liquid sunrise. The rain sizzled and steamed away before it could touch me. A circle of dry, cracked earth spread for my feet. I heard gasps, I heard whimpers, but it was all distant, muffled under the thunderous roar in my own ears, the roar of awakening. My bones, they didn't break. They sang. They shifted and aligned with the music I had always been deaf to. It was not painful. It was like coming home after a long, lonely journey. My vision sharpened, every droplet of rain hanging in the air, a perfect sphere. Every terrified face in the crowd was etched in perfect detail. And Kael? Kael was on his knees. His head was bowed, his powerful shoulders trembling. Not just him, all around the clearing, warriors, elders, even the children, all were pressed to the earth by a pressure that radiated from me, a sovereignty that demanded reverence. I looked down at my hands. They were shimmering, translucent. Then the light consumed me. It was not a loss of self, but an expansion. When my vision cleared, I saw the world from a higher vantage. I felt the forest's breath, the moon's hidden pull, the heartbeat of every living thing for miles. I was in my wolf form, but I was not a normal wolf. My fur was the color of moonlight on fresh snow, shimmering with a hint of gold. I was larger than any alpha. Strength, pure and ancient, coursed through me. I turned my head and my gaze swept the clearing. My gaze landed on Kael. He looked up, his gray eyes wide with something beyond shock, with primal recognition, and with a horror so deep it shook his very soul. A voice, not a sound, but a knowing, resonated from me into the minds of every wolf present. You condemned what you could not understand. The words hung in the air, vibrating with truth. I did not speak to him alone. I spoke to the pack that had cast me out. Then, without a backward glance, I turned. The crowd scrambled to part before me. I leaped from the platform, my powerful limbs carrying me past the border stones of Silvermane territory in a single fluid bound. I did not run in panic. I ran with purpose, into the dark, welcoming embrace of the untamed woods. I was Elara no longer. I was something that had been forgotten, and I was free.
The forest was a symphony, and for the first time I could hear every note, the scuttling of a beetle under bark, the sigh of sap rising in a pine, the distant call of an owl claiming its hunting ground. I ran for hours, or maybe minutes. Time had lost its meaning. The world was too bright, too loud, too alive to measure in such a trivial way. My wolf form moved with an instinctual grace I'd never possessed. I was not escaping. I was exploring a body that was finally, gloriously my own. As dawn tinged the sky, I found a small, clear stream. I shifted back to my human form, the change as natural as breathing. I knelt in the icy water, drinking deeply, and saw my reflection. My eyes, once a plain brown, now held a ring of luminous gold around the pupil, a permanent mark of what I had become. I had no clothes, no supplies, no plan, but for the first time in my life, I had no fear. I was an omega no more. What was I? The word came to me on a breeze that smelled of pine and possibility. Luna. Not just a alpha's mate, the Luna, the first mother, the moon's own daughter. The myths were whispered to children, tales of a she-wolf of pure light who would rise when the packs were lost. I never imagined the myth would wear my face. As the sun rose higher, I began to feel not just the life around me, but the pain, a throbbing dissonance in the harmony. I followed the feeling, moving silently through the undergrowth. I found him in a small, foul-smelling hollow, a wolf, his fur matted and dull, eyes rolling with a feral madness. He was a rogue, one severed from pack bonds for too long. He saw me and snarled, hackles raised, dripping saliva. A pang of sorrow hit me. This was what happened to wolves without connection. They shattered. I did not growl, I did not bare my teeth. I simply stood still and let the calm, golden light within me radiate outward. I reached for him not with force, but with an offering. Peace. The word was a feeling, a warmth I pushed toward him. The rogue wolf flinched, his snarl died in his throat. He took a stumbling step back, then another. The wild panic in his eyes began to recede, like a turbulent sea growing calm. He whined, a low, confused sound, and lowered his head. He was not submitting, he was remembering what it was to not be afraid. He turned and disappeared into the trees, but the madness was gone from his gait. I had healed a fracture I didn't know I could mend. This was my power, not dominance, but restoration. As I stood there, a new sensation prickled at the edge of my awareness. I was being watched, not by one set of eyes, but by many. From the shadows of the towering trees, figures emerged, not in attack, but in cautious awe. Rogues. Dozens of them, in both human and wolf form. They were scarred, thin, their eyes holding stories of exile and survival. At their front stood a man. He was older, his dark hair streaked with silver, his face a map of old battles, with a fierce scar cutting across one cheek. But his eyes were clear, intelligent, and held no madness. "The forest has been whispering all morning," he said, his voice a gravelly rumble. It said a queen had walked into the wild. "My name is Ronan. This is my refuge." He gestured to the hidden camp behind him, shelters built into the hillside. "And you are not what the Silvermane Pack believes you to be."
Ronan's refuge was not a pack. It was a sanctuary. There were no ranks, no enforced hierarchies. Wolves were here because they had nowhere else to go. Exiles like me, those who disagreed with their alphas, those whose wolves were too different, too gentle, or too wild for rigid pack law. They called themselves the Freeborn. Ronan offered me a place by the central fire, a bowl of hearty stew and a woolen blanket. No chains, no mealing, just silent, wary respect. "They tried to execute you," Ronan stated later as we watched the Freeborn go about their evening rituals, "for a crime you didn't commit." It wasn't a question. "How do you know I didn't do it?" I asked, my voice still unfamiliar in its new steadiness. He gave me a sidelong glance. "I've met poisoners. I've met traitors. Their eyes are hard, calculating. Yours," he paused, "yours hold a storm of gold and sorrow. You grieve for the pack that cast you out. A guilty person does not grieve." His insight startled me. I looked into the flames. Kael, Alpha Kael. He was my mate. Ronan's eyebrows rose. The Silvermane Alpha? And he let this happen? He didn't know. I never told him. I was a silent Omega. What could I offer a king? "The truth," Ronan said simply, "and your loyalty, which is more than most alphas deserve." He told me his own story then. He was once a high-ranking beta in the neighboring Stormfang pack. He questioned his alpha's cruel policies, advocated for mercy toward rogues. He was branded a traitor and exiled. "I found others like me," he said, "broken pieces. We learned that a family doesn't need a decree to exist. It needs trust." Over the next few days, I learned what my presence did. Wherever I walked, a sense of calm followed. Frayed tempers soothed, nightmares lessened. A young she-wolf who hadn't spoken since her exile brought me a wildflower. An old warrior, his mind scarred by battle, found peace sitting quietly near me. My power was a balm, but it also drew attention. Ronan's scouts returned with troubling news. Silvermane scouts were patrolling their borders with new intensity. The story of the wolfless Omega's transformation had spread, twisted with fear. Some called me a demon, others a myth made flesh. The packs were nervous. "They fear what they don't control," Ronan said grimly, "and you, Elara, are beyond control." One evening, as the moon rose, a deep, resonant howl cut through the night. It came from the direction of Silvermane territory. It was a howl of search, of longing, and of utter despair. I knew that howl. It vibrated in the hollow space where our mate bond had been. Kael. My heart, which I thought had turned to stone, gave a painful lurch. Ronan watched my face. "He's looking for you." "He's looking for the myth," I corrected, hardening my voice. "He's looking to correct his mistake." And if he finds you? I looked up at the moon, feeling her gentle silver light on my skin. The Luna has no place for him. But even as I said it, the memory of his face, proud and broken on his knees, haunted me.
The Silvermane Great Hall was a tomb of whispers. Alpha Kael sat on his throne of carved oak, but he felt like a ghost occupying a king's chair. The emptiness inside him was a physical void, a howling wind where a warm, silent connection had once lived. He had severed it himself. He kept seeing her eyes in that final moment before the light, not accusation, but a profound, weary sadness. He had replayed the evidence 1,000 times. The vial, the witnesses, the council's unanimous verdict. It had all been so neat, so perfect. His brother, Liren, approached, his expression grim. The scout from the Eastern Ridge has returned. He confirms it. The Freeborn rogues have a new member, a she-wolf with moonlight fur. Kael's fist clenched. Did he see her? Only at a distance, but he felt it, Kael. He said it was like coming home after a long winter. A home he had burned to the ground. Liren placed a small, charred leather pouch on the table. I investigated the trader who sold the nightshade. He was paid with Silvermane coin, but the order didn't come from your coffers. It came from Marin's personal guard. Cold fury washed over Kael. Marin, the beta he had thought poisoned. Marin, who had recovered with surprising speed. Marin, who had been most vocal about Elara's guilt. Bring him. Kael's voice was deadly quiet. The confrontation was short. Faced with the evidence and the sudden, crushing weight of his alpha's rage, the guard confessed. Marin had staged his own poisoning. He had seen Elara's quiet devotion to Kael, had sensed the dormant, immense power within her and feared it. He wanted the weak, silent Omega gone before she could ever awaken and challenge his influence. Kael didn't roar. He didn't destroy his chamber. The truth settled over him with the finality of a glacier, cold and heavy and crushing. He had been manipulated. He had allowed his pride, his blind adherence to tradition, to murder the most precious thing the moon had ever given him. He had not just rejected his mate, he had rejected a queen, and in doing so, he had broken something in the fabric of his own pack. The trust was gone. He saw it in the eyes of his warriors, the unspoken question, if our Alpha could be so blind, so wrong about his own fated Luna, what else is he wrong about? That night, Kael stood alone on the battlements. The howl he sent into the darkness was not one of command. It was a raw, open wound of sound, a plea, an apology flung into the uncaring night. He knew she heard it. He felt a faint, echoing tremor in the emptiness she left behind. It was not an answer, it was an acknowledgement of his cane. It was enough to make him fall to his knees. Liren found him there at dawn. The council is demanding action, brother. They say the Luna among rogues is a threat. They want to retrieve her. Kael stood, turning eyes that were now haunted and clear to his brother. They will not touch her. They will argue. Let them argue. Kael's voice cracked like a whip. I was their weapon once. I will not be so again. She is under my protection. From this moment, any wolf who threatens the Freeborn threatens me. He was turning his world upside down for a woman who might never forgive him. He didn't care. For the first time, Alpha Kael was making a choice for his heart, not just his crown, and it was the only choice that felt right. The emissary from the High Council of Packs arrived a week later. He was not from Silvermane. He was from the distant, rigid Stonehold Pack, an elder named Boren. He stood at the edge of the Freeborn territory with a contingent of stern-faced warriors, their postures stiff with disapproval. Ronan and I met him, the Freeborn a silent, solid wall of support behind us. Boren did not bow. We come for the one called Elara, the so-called Luna. His voice was like grinding stones. She is a destabilizing force, an unbound power among lawless rogues. She must be brought to the council for judgment and proper placement. I felt Ronan tense beside me. I stepped forward, my calm a stark contrast to his bluster. I am Elara. I have had my judgment. I was condemned to die. I choose my own placement now. Boren's eyes narrowed. You do not understand. Your power is not yours to wield as you please. It belongs to the structured packs, to be guided by law and tradition for the greater good. A cold anger, clean and sharp, rose in me. The greater good that demanded my death on false charges? The law that lets the guilty manipulate the innocent? I am not a weapon to be placed on your shelf, Elder Boren. I am a living wolf, and I am free. For the first time, I let a fraction of my power rise to the surface, not to attack, to reveal. My eyes glowed, and a gentle golden light emanated from me, washing over the Freeborn. I felt their resolve strengthen, their fear melt away. Boren and his warriors took an involuntary step back, their hands going to their weapons. You see, Boren spot, you cannot control it. It is a danger. It is only a danger to those who build their world on fear, I said, my voice resonating with a depth that was not entirely my own. I offer healing. You offer chains. I decline your invitation. The standoff stretched. Boren's face flushed with anger and impotence. He could not force me, not here, not with the Freeborn ready to fight, and not with my power shimmering in the air between us. This is not over, child, he hissed. The packs will not tolerate a rogue queen. Alpha Kael will be compelled to act. At the mention of Kael, my heart stuttered, but I held firm. Let them try. As Boren retreated, Ronan let out a slow breath. He is not right. They will try. Kael may be your mate, but he is bound by the ancient covenants between packs. The council's word holds weight. I looked toward the Silvermane border, my newfound certainty tinged with a whisper of dread. What would Kael do when forced to choose between me and the entire world he was sworn to uphold? The compulsion came not as a request, but as a summons. The High Council, led by Stonehold and backed by 3 other major packs, invoked the ancient covenant, a law from a time of war, stating that any power threatening the balance of all packs must be subdued by unified force. They named me the threat, and they commanded Alpha Kael, as the wronged party, to lead the subduing. He refused. The message he sent back shook the foundation of the Northern Territories. It was a single sentence: I will not raise a hand against my Luna. His defiance was an earthquake. It split the Pap Alliance. Some saw it as ultimate loyalty, others as treasonous weakness. But it gave the Council the pretext they needed. If the Silvermane Alpha would not control his mate, they would. An allied force, led by Boren and Marin, the now exposed traitor who had fled Silvermane, gathered at the border. They did not come for diplomacy. They came with silver-netted ropes, with bindings etched in old magic, with the intent to cage the myth. In the Freeborn sanctuary, we prepared not for war, but for defense. Ronan organized the fighters. I moved among the non-combatants, the elders, the young, the broken, and did what I did best. I brought calm. I wrapped them in a sense of safety, of unshakable peace. You cannot fight them all, Ronan told me quietly as we watched the enemy forces gather on the distant plain. I don't intend to fight, I said, looking at the terrified but determined faces of my Freeborn. I intend to stand and let them see what they are truly afraid of. The battle, when it came, was not a clash of armies. It was a tide of hostility breaking against a shore of serene light. The allied warriors charged into the Freeborn territory, and I stepped forward, alone. I shifted into my Luniform, the glorious, towering wolf of moonlight and gold. I did not snarl. I did not attack. I simply stood in their path and let my sovereignty unfurl. It was like a wave of pure, tranquil energy. Warriors stumbled, their battle cries dying in their throats. Their wolves, deep inside, recognized the source of their own being. Many fell to their knees, weapons dropping from numb hands. But not all. Boren and Maren, their hearts filled with venom and ambition, were shielded by their own hatred. They wore amulets of obsidian, stones that deadened the pack sense, that muted the soul's connection. They pushed through the wave of calm, their eyes locked on me. "Now!" Maren screamed. Warriors behind them flung the silver nets. The magic in them stung, a bitter, cold shock against my light. It was not enough to bind me, but it was enough to dim me, to make me falter. I saw Ronan and the Freeborn surge forward to engage, to protect me. Chaos erupted, and through the fray I saw another force arrive. Silvermane wolves, led not by Kael, but by Liren. They did not attack the Freeborn. They turned on the allied force, defending our border. Liren fought his way to my side. "Kael sends his strength," he shouted over the din. "He is held at Stonehold, under guard for his defiance, but he commanded us to come." My heart swelled even as it broke for him. Then a searing pain shot through my shoulder, a silver-tipped arrow fired by Maren from the shadows. The pain was incendiary. My light flickered. The nets grew heavier. For a moment, fear touched me, the fear of being captured, of being caged, of having this glorious freedom torn away. That fear gave them an opening. The nets closed in. The obsidian cell in Stonehold was meant to break alphas. It blocked the moon's light, muted the bond to one's pack, and echoed with the screams of those who had gone mad within it. Kael felt the walls pressing on his mind, but he clung to one thing, the faint, silvery thread that was not the mate bond, but something new, a connection to her power, to her essence. He felt it flicker, thousands of hearts beating as one. He felt her light dim under a wave of cold, hostile magic, and something in him shattered, not in weakness, in transformation. He had always drawn power from his rank, from his bloodline, from the obedience of his pack. Now he drew it from something more primal, from the truth of his failure, from the depth of his love, from the absolute certainty that he would burn the world to ash before he let them hurt her again. A roar tore from his throat, not of a man, but of a wolf claiming its true purpose. The obsidian, which dampened power linked to others, could not contain power that came solely from within. The cell door did not just break, it vaporized. Kael emerged not as the polished Alpha King, but as a force of nature. His eyes glowed with a fierce silver light. He shifted in the stone corridor, his wolf form massive and terrifying in its focused rage. He did not stop to fight the guards. He ran. He ran with a speed that blurred the forest around him. He was a comet streaking toward the only star that mattered. He arrived at the Freeborn border as the silver nets were tightening around Elara's magnificent, faltering form. He saw Maren raising a spear for a final strike. A sound ripped from Kael's wolf that froze the very blood in every creature's veins. It was the sound of a king falling, and something far more dangerous rising in his place. He crossed the distance in a single impossible leap, placing himself between the spear and Elara. The spear meant for her heart struck his shoulder instead. He did not cry out. He turned his head, his silver eyes meeting Maren's. In them, Maren saw not anger, but a judgment so complete it was like looking into the void. Maren dropped the spear and fled. Kael then turned to the nets. He did not tear them, he placed his wounded body against them, and where his blood, the blood of an alpha who had sacrificed his pride, his freedom, and now his body for his Luna, touched the enchanted silver, the magic fizzled and died. The nets fell away, harmless. The fighting stopped. All eyes turned to the scene, the wounded, radiant Luna, and the mighty Alpha King, bleeding at her feet, having fallen not in defeat, but in ultimate, undeniable devotion. He looked up at her, his wolf's head lowering in submission, not to her power, but to her right to choose. His message was clear for all to see. I am not here to claim you. I am here because you are worth everything.
Silence, thick and profound, blanketed the battlefield. The allied warriors, their will to fight evaporated, stared at the fallen Alpha and the risen Luna. Boren's face was ashen. The scheme was over. The truth, written in blood and sacrifice, was undeniable. I looked down at Kael, the silver arrow still in his shoulder, his blood staining his beautiful fur. The anger, the hurt, the betrayal I had clung to, it melted away like morning frost under the sun. It was replaced by a sorrow so vast it could have swallowed the moon. Not for me, for him, for the pain he had endured, for the blindness he had suffered, for the long, lonely road he had walked to reach this moment of absolute humility. I shifted back to my human form and knelt beside him. I did not touch the wound. I placed my hand gently on his head, between his ears. A pure golden light, warm and healing, flowed from my palm. It enveloped the arrow, dissolving the silver, knitting flesh and sinew back together. His pain eased. He shifted back, lying on the earth before me, human and vulnerable. His storm-gray eyes, now clear of all pride, met mine. "Elara," he breathed, the word a prayer. "I am so sorry for everything. I don't ask for forgiveness. I only needed you to know. I see you now." Tears, hot and silent, streamed down my face. "I know," I whispered. I stood then, helping him to his feet. Together we faced the gathered wolves, Freeborn, Silvermane, and the stunned allied force. My voice, when I spoke, carried on the wind, clear and strong. "This ends now. The old ways of fear and control are over. I am the Luna. I do not seek to rule your packs. I offer a covenant of my own, one of protection for those who seek peace, of sanctuary for the lost, and of judgment for those who wield power with cruelty." I looked at Boren. "Return to your council. Tell them the Luna does not recognize their authority to bind or break. Tell them a new age has dawned, and it begins with choice." There was no argument. The display of power, of sacrifice, of raw truth had disarmed them completely. As the allied forces retreated, a new sound rose from the Freeborn and the Silvermane wolves. It was not a howl of victory, but a low, harmonious hum of acknowledgement, of unity. Kael stood beside me, not as my alpha, not yet as my mate, but as my equal in this new beginning. He looked at me, his eyes full of a quiet, steadfast devotion. "My place is by your side, if you will have me, as your protector, as your student, as the wolf who will spend a lifetime earning the right to simply stand in your light." I took his hand. The touch sent a spark through me, not the old mate bond, but something new, forged in fire and forgiveness. "We have both fallen, Kael," I said softly. "Now let us rise together."
The clearing where they had tried to kill me was now a place of gathering, not for Silvermane alone, but for any wolf who sought a new way. A simple stone platform stood where the execution block had been. On it, under the light of the full moon, I stood with Kael at my right hand and Ronan at my left. Below us stretched a sea of faces from a dozen different packs and countless rogue bands. They had come not by command, but by call, the call of a hope they had forgotten. Kael, his shoulder healed but marked by a silvery scar, spoke first. His voice carried the weight of his journey. I was an alpha who ruled by tradition and fear. I failed to see the truth in front of me. I failed my mate and I failed my pack. I have abdicated my title as Alpha of the Silvermane. My brother, Lirin, will lead them with the wisdom I lacked. A murmur rippled through the crowd. An Alpha stepping down was unheard of. He turned to me, his gaze unwavering. "My strength, my life, my loyalty are yours, Luna Elara, to guide as you see fit." Then it was my turn. I looked out at the hopeful, weary, brave souls before me. I was an Omega who believed she was nothing, I began, my voice soft but reaching every ear. I learned that our worth is not given to us by rank or by the wolf in our skin. It is born in our hearts. I am not here to create a new empire. I am here to tend a garden. I gestured to the wildflowers growing at the edge of the clearing. Some wolves are mighty oaks, meant to lead and protect. Some are sturdy grass, meant to bind and support. Some are delicate blooms, meant to bring beauty and healing. In a garden, all have purpose, all belong. I saw tears in many eyes. They understood. This is the Dawn Covenant, I declared. Any wolf of any pack or none may seek refuge, counsel, or healing here. We will live by respect, not fear, by choice, not coercion. This is not my territory. This is our sanctuary. Then I did something no Luna in legend had ever done. I stepped down from the platform and walked among them. I touched a scarred warrior's arm, letting healing warmth seep into an old injury. I smiled at a child hiding behind her mother's legs. I knelt before a very old rogue, taking his gnarled hands in mine. "You are welcome here, grandfather." He wept. That was the true coronation, not with a crown, but with connection. As the moon reached her zenith, bathing us all in silver, a collective howl rose, a song of release, of joy, of a future unwritten. Kael howled beside me, his voice strong and clear, a promise of fidelity. Ronan's howl was a bark of triumphant freedom, and my howl? Mine was a note of pure, golden light given sound. The girl who had knelt in the mud waiting for the axe was gone. In her place stood the Luna, crowned by moonlight and the freely given loyalty of the broken and the brave. The Alpha King had fallen, but in his fall he had found his true strength, and when the Luna rose, she did not rise alone. She rose with a whole world choosing to rise with her.